Hello, everyone, and welcome. It is Monday, October 7th, and we are here starting out week 2. We have a new round of assignments for this week. We have a new game, which requires a new style and approach to the music, a new genre, and a new way to kind of build and layer your music for a new game called Angry Bots. So our discussion more towards the second half of our class will discuss the new assignments for this week and how you will prepare for that. But you have now finished out your first round of assignments. You have completed the music and the sound effects for your first game, 2D platformer. We had an open submission for feedback and peer review, and we got a number of submissions for that. We have a total of 5 submissions here for us to take a listen to. So this Monday session will be like the rest of our Monday sessions, where we will start out with the review of the previous week's assignments. If you are able to make the live sessions, then we can talk and discuss and ask questions and provide feedback. But if not, then there is an assignment available each week to submit your composition for, it is a discussion post, so open for peer review, and then I will also take the ones that are submitted and load them up here into a single session so we can take a listen to them during the live class. So this week we will be listening to 2D platformer submissions. Week 3, we will be listening to the Angry Bots submissions, and then in week 4, we check out the chiptune composition. So that is how we are set up, and then after we finish with this, we will get into a discussion of the new assignments and the new game for week 2. So hopefully the kind of the best part about these open peer reviews is everybody is going to get a feedback video overall, but you not only do you hear review and feedback for your own submission, but you will also hear a lot of variation from everybody else's submission. We have a variety of ones to check out this round, and so hopefully this encourages people to submit for next round. So the more submissions we have, the more variety we have, and it allows us to check out all of the good stuff, and also check out and listen to some of the things that we also are trying to avoid, so that you will hear things that you would not even considered in your own submission, both good and bad. So I think it is definitely beneficial to have the most variety that we can, so you can see all sorts of different approaches to this same project. So I'm going to start out with an overview of the 2D platformer. We're just going to take a look at all of these, and then I will dive into them one at a time and take a listen to what we have. So, as you can see here, everybody who submitted, you have your own individual track with their last name on it. And then we have the 9 files for each student submission over here in this column. These are all of the main loops. These are 8 bars long. Here in the middle, these are the 2-bar intro cues. And over here, these are the 2-bar ending cues. And they're only arranged like this due to how they're alphabetically importing into Logic. So we'll start out listening to the main loops, and that will inform us a lot of what the majority of the music that will be heard by the player, and then we'll take a listen to the intros and endings to see how it all ties together. So, our main loops. These are 3 8-bar main loops. Down here it says intro because this submission, it seems that all of the intros and endings are 8 bars long also. And those need to be 2 bars, and only the main loops are 8 bars. But the main loops, first and foremost, are set up to loop. So there's no pops or clicks or gaps or fades in between any one of the files. And just visually looking at all of these, they look like they're going to transition seamlessly from one to the next. All 3 of these main loop files need to feel like one continuous piece of music. The same band playing the same song, using the same instruments, all in the same key, all in the same tempo and time signature between all 9 of the files. So as you go from intros to main loops to endings, the musical phrasing makes sense. It doesn't jump around between different tempos with each file, doesn't jump around between different keys, because as the game randomly chooses one of the intros and loops between all 3 of the main loops, and then eventually transitions into one of the endings, all of the different combinations need to make sense. This is really where the challenge of this composition is, where you have 9 files that all need to make sense as one continuous piece of music. So again, similar instrumentation, same key, same tempo, same time signature. The player really shouldn't be able to identify where they are in the mix. You kind of want to lose them overall and not have anything be too obvious, like strong changes in instrumentation or rhythm or something like that. Also, the mix. As you can see, each one of these has a different overall volume or intensity of the music, but they're all continuous or consistent. So as long as going from the intros through the main loops and into the endings are a similar level all the way across, then you have the consistency in the mix, and it should make a whole lot more sense when played back in the game. At some point, you should probably take your bounced sound design files, your sound effects, and put them into the same session as music. So either take your music files, throw them in your sound effects session, or your sound effects files, like the bounced files, and throw them into your music session, or just create a new session and put them all in there. And listen to them together to make sure that neither the music or the sound effects are crazy louder than the other. More than likely, some of the sound effects are going to be louder than the rest of the audio, but really you're looking for consistency. You have final control over the volume or the mix between music and sound effects when you get everything into Wise. So you can tweak it later on once it gets into the game. But for the most part, you are best served if you have a solid mix and you're using the meters and the faders in Logic or your DAW. The meters, the faders in your DAW are going to be much kind of clearer or more detailed or easier to work with than those in Wise. The ones in Wise are perfectly usable, but overall you're going to get a little bit clearer idea of the volume and overall mix of all of your files in your DAW. So, the main thing is consistency all the way across. So that's what you're going to pay attention to in the mix. Compositionally, it should fit the overall feel of the game. It's a lighthearted, fun, kind of action-packed game, so it needs to be up-tempo, maintain the pacing, maintain the energy or excitement all the way through the composition. That means you should have strong drums or rhythm, bass line, and harmonic progression to kind of support everything, and then a strong melody that moves and develops over time and across the 8 bars of each one of the main loops. And you want to avoid repetition as much as possible to use the full 8 bars to develop your musical idea all the way across. All right, so that is what we are paying attention to most from the main loops. Intros. Let's see if I can make these fit here. So the intros are meant to build up into the main loops. The end of any one of these intro files needs to butt up against one of these main loops and needs to work with all 3 of them randomly, depending on however the game ends up choosing the order of the files. And that means that the last chord, or kind of what you build up to here in the intros, there are 2 bars, so you should use the entire 2 bars to be building, creating anticipation, creating energy as it rises up towards kind of the downbeat when it drops in on the main loops of whichever one it does. So the last chord in the intros are probably a 4 or 5 chord or some suspension to resolve to what's probably the tonic in your first chord of any one of these main loops. At least it helps if it's the same chord. Tonic is the most obvious, the most direct place to start. But whatever chord it is, it helps that it's the same across all 3 of the main loops. So you always have this anchor point. No matter where you wander off compositionally, you always have the anchor point to return back to at the head of each one of the main loops, which also means that the ends of these intros needs to kind of couple into the beginning of whatever that first chord is on the main loops. So you need to also use all of the same instrumentation in the intros and the endings that you used in the main loops. So nothing new or nothing should kind of just pop out of nowhere or disappear. Like every once in a while, just like the drums are missing entirely from the intros and endings. So those types of things will help the consistency in the overall composition. So all of these look, again, pretty solid and look like they're the same intensity or volume as the main loops. You don't want the intros to be that much quieter or that much louder than whatever's going on in the main loops. And then the endings. The main thing with the ending cues are they need to end. They need to resolve. They need to finish. They need to end in silence. So these look like they make it. These look like they make it. And these look like they reach silence. These look like they get cut off by the end of the file. Same with these down here. Obviously, we'll check out and see what kind of 2 bars we want out of these. But whatever it is, it needs to finish. Like these kind of shapes here where you can obviously tell everything's fading to silence and there's some silence at the end of the file. The endings, you have a little more room to do some different or strange or unique things where you not only is the round over, but you've lost the round. So that's the only way you'll hear the endings. There is no winning in this, at least this version of the game. Just the score keeps going and going. So there is an ending, and when you will hear these ending cues when you've lost. So maybe the main loops and the intros are all in a major key, and the endings go towards the minor tonality or diminished or some dissonance or just kind of fall apart entirely. You can have a strong resolution, or you can use effects or some sort of interesting way to end it out because the endings do not have to tie directly into anything else. The endings need to end and reach silence, so it picks back up again at the beginning of these intros. So, yeah, that is most of what we're looking for or listening for when going over 2D platformer. So let's do this. Kind of zoom in here on the first one. And let me get my headphones on. And let's see if we can hear this. Oops, let's do this. All right. All right. Excuse me. Almost got me. All right. Well, let's keep going. Turn it down here. All right. So I like the overall groove. I like the dump, bump, 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 bump kind of feel from the bass line. Rhythmically and with the bass, I'd maybe like to hear a little bit more change from one to the next. And what you're doing with the guitar line, the lead line, and then the chords, maybe a little bit more energy through here. Like in this first one and the third one, kind of have a little bit more movement. Also maybe moving away from the da 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 that you have in each one of these, just to create a little bit more variation from one to the next. A little bit more change in the drums, change in that kind of pattern overall from the melody and the harmony would definitely create some solid variation while keeping that dun 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 dun, kind of leaning into that sort of groove overall to keep pushing the pace forward. Let's try 3 intros. All right. So let's go one by one. This one, I think, I like the second bar because you have the roll. But a little dead in the kind of first part, so maybe create a little bit more energy. The other thing that I'm going to point out with this one also is the kind of downward movement. And this one, generally, a downward movement makes me think more of an ending, like you're resolving, as opposed to kind of this building and creating more energy. This one sounds almost like a 2-bar loop. It sounds like almost like a surf guitar lick. But especially with the drums, it's really the drums that are consistent all the way through. If you had a drum pattern like this and then went into like a build or a roll in the second bar, it would create more energy. So I would say first half or the first bar is going to be like the drum pattern, and the second bar goes into a roll or a fill, and then all of the instrumentation kind of builds up. I think that would create a strong kind of anticipation or excitement through those cues. So you almost get to the endings of each one of these. There's probably, I feel like there should be maybe one more chord or note after a couple of these. But the assignment requires 2 bars, or the assignment states 2 bars. You don't have to use the entire 2 bars, or if you do and you need a little bit of extra room for ending or fade out, like your guitar kind of fading to silence, you can do that. So here you should probably end a little bit early. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. So you could probably end on the 2, maybe have the drums end up a little bit earlier. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, and just like have the drums fill. And this one, if you just added a little bit of tail, because you do actually end compositionally on the 4 of 2. 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. So if you ended that out and had a little bit of tail, that should be fine. Like you don't need this lick. That almost makes it sound like a 2-bar loop. Da, 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 ba, ba, ba. But here, if you ended 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, beat 3 of bar 2, that would give you enough room to end. And just, and maybe even the last, because it doesn't hit the tonic there. Da, 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 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3. Yeah, this one, if you just left it sustaining and faded it, maybe did a little fade on the bounce, and actually reach silent so it just doesn't get cut off. So compositionally, you're headed in the right direction. Just make sure you actually kind of reach that period at the musical end of the sentence. If you need to end it earlier, or if you need a little bit of tail, just as long as there's no brand new notes coming beyond bar 2. All right, so good work overall. I think it fits for the feel of the game. Just a couple of tweaks from one to the next. So let's jump to this one. And we'll take a listen to the main loops. So excellent production overall. I think the rhythm and the energy works very nicely for this game. Kind of maintains that energy all the way through. The main thing I would point out, I mean, you got a solid drums, bass line, a couple of layers to support it on the harmony, and then this kind of portamento, kind of sliding lead line. The main thing, and I notice it most in the first one and the third one, is the repetition of the lead line in the second 4 bars. It doesn't, I don't know if it's exactly the same. Oops, let's jump to here. Yeah, it goes da 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 da. So I think these repeat. Yeah, they're kind of hitting the same chords, same notes. And does this one do it? It's just kind of halftime feel. Yeah, I think it's doing it also. So work on the second 4 bars of each one of the cues. Just make sure there's more variation. I'd like to hear maybe different rhythmic subdivisions of that lead line, so it's dancing around a little bit more. That feels like they're mostly quarter notes. So if they was kind of a little bit choppier overall, but I do like the portamento slides all the way through. So just make sure to watch out for the repetition on the second 4 bars of each one of those. Let's go ahead and check out 3 intros. I think that maybe the third one could have a little bit, just compared to the other two in the second bar, there's a lot of energy. And this one too, the pitch ramp. So maybe a little bit more energy, just kind of almost feels like a step down or a rest in the second bar through the intro, or the third intro. This one, I would definitely be concerned with the pitch and how the pitch ramp matches each of the three main loops. I mean, it might just be so weird and pitchy it doesn't matter until it actually hits on the downbeat of the main loops. But the 1 and 3 are much more clear on their pitch. But I mean, it could definitely work out. Just needs to be tested, make sure that it all works. Ending 2 looks a lot lower in volume or intensity than these, but let's check it out. 3 endings. Cool. I think I like the effect that each one of them have. It's kind of like filter sweep there. As everything falls down there. Kind of the delay feedback effect here. Yeah, the only thing this is missing is that big hit at the front of each one of these, or a big hit at the beginning of each one, so that you have they kind of explode a little bit. Or bass drop or whatever cool stuff you're doing in 1 and 3. So that I mean, it's a cool effect, but it doesn't have that same, like, slamming into the wall and everything's over kind of effect that you get in 1 and 3. So, everything works very well. I think, again, composition or, like, production-wise, everything fits nicely. A couple of things to just pay attention to: the second 4 bars of the main loops, and then how the intros and endings kind of begin and end the phrasing. All right. Nice work. Another good one to check out. All right, let's see. We'll get on to the third one here. All right, let's check out 3 main loops. Combination of instrumentation, the drums, we got drums, bass line. Almost feels like there's multiple layers to the bass, but I don't think. I think it's just more like a attack and a kind of a solid bass tone. Hear the marimba in there, and the sax. I guess that's a regular piano, maybe. Maybe electric piano, although the piano and the marimba are following each other very closely. Or they were, yeah. Okay, so I think compositionally, I think everything works together. Maybe a little slow or relaxed feeling. Could have a little bit more energy. And I think that some of the longer, more sustained feel from the bass and the saxophone So having a bit more movement, and like you use hi-hat tambourine lines on the eighth notes. Right, these are more on the quarter notes, but then you kind of go to the eighth note over here, which helps bring up the energy, and also just maybe a little bit more staccato phrasing from the instrumentation, or like an eighth note bass or something that pushes the pacing a bit more forward. Also, the side stick doesn't help with the energy level. The other thing was kind of having a strong feeling of which of the instruments are your lead instrument, or is your lead instrument. Here in the second one, I can really identify it as the saxophone line. In the other two, they kind of come, the sax, which is what, now that I hear the second one, I want to focus on the horn in the first and third, but I don't hear it as predominant in those. And the third one, it's almost the bass line. Bass line feels like it comes up an octave. There's a lot more present. So main thing would be identifying which of the instrumentation is the lead, whether it's the same in all three of them or if it changes, and then just putting more of a focus, more of a kind of spotlight on it to make it really identifiable to the audience as to which is the lead. It kind of sits out there and creates most of the development and evolution of the music. All right, let's go into 3. I like that little fall there. Okay, 3 intros. All right, so starting with the intros, I would feel that the sax is the lead instrument, but I don't really get that from 1 and 3. So it's more, it confirms it a little bit more here in the intros, and then it feels weird that it doesn't exist in the third one at all. So yeah, have the consistency and really kind of focus on that lead brass line to really focus on it. Lead sax line, better way of saying it. 3 endings. Cool. Yep, again, I would have it also included in the second one there. Third one. No, second and third one. All right, so I'd kind of head more towards what's going on in the first one for 2 and 3. Again, for that consistency of that horn and as the lead all the way through. So again, compositionally, the formatting, everything fits well. Everything will transition nicely in the game. Yeah, just also once you get into the game, you'll get a sense of where the focus needs to be in the overall composition or in the mix. All right, very good. Let's move on here. And we'll do 3 more main loops. The energy works very nice all the way through. Actually, I wouldn't say all the way through. 2 of the 3 of these. The middle one, the energy drops down quite a bit. So that is something to consider. I think one of the main challenges is the difference between each one of them, and it's mostly in the rhythm and intensity. Since the focus is on the big bass and the big rhythm from the drums, I think I would go with the first one because it kind of establishes the strongest pace. But the problem is once you switch to 2, it kind of feels like the breakdown of a kind of a traditional electronic or EDM song. So, or like the build-up, I guess, where you're waiting for the bass to drop again. The problem in the game is since it's randomly chosen, what happens if it keeps choosing this one over and over repeatedly? Basically, you never get the payoff of the bass dropping in. Plus, you also, it's very obvious as to which queue you are in. I mean, you don't know if it's 1, 2, or 3, but you can definitely identify this one versus the other 2. So that strong of a change makes it more identifiable and even distracting to the player. Because then if it gets into the repetition, they'll always know where they are in the music. The other thing that deals with that repetition is the phrasing of the kind of the licks and kind of riffs that you have in there. So this really feels like almost a 2-bar loop that's repeated 4 times, or really a 4-bar phrase that repeats twice. So this, we got 2 bars, another 2 bars. The bar 5 and 6 are the same as 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 is the same as 7 and 8, and that's the same all the way through here. This is just 2 bars, all the same all the way through. I guess it goes down a note in 3 and 4. Same thing here. So you want to use the entire 8 bars to develop your melodic idea instead of worrying about repetition. The other thing is it's just kind of wasting hard drive space if all of your music did this, because you could get the same effect with the file being half the length and the game doing all of the looping for you. So instead of bouncing the file twice as long, they would just chop it in half and use only half as much. But then you're kind of wasting the other half of music if you could write an entire 8-bar phrase that could change over time. So that would be the main thing. The energy, the formatting, all of that works nicely. It's just the repetition and how identifiable one is versus the other. I think you should really kind of focus on the pace and the intensity of main loop 1. 3 intros. No, those aren't intros. Intros. I like I think all 3 of them work just, well, mostly fine. I just like the riser on the intro run. Risers always make me think of starting. Drops is kind of falls. Makes me think of ending. So just subconsciously, there we go. Subconsciously you feel like this is more building or starting up, and this is more shutting down or ending. So just something to consider. I think, I don't know if in the larger context of the game that would particularly matter, but something to pay attention to while checking it out in the game. And 3 endings. Yeah, I think all this work. Yeah, so these are all good examples of they use the entire 2 bars, but but the last note ends on beat 4 of bar 2, but still you have a lot of room here to end with all that cool delay and reverb and all that stuff that helps the ending kind of tail off. So I think the endings work just fine. So just some things to focus on the intros. I don't know if the intros, the risers, are actually going to matter in the larger scope, but the repetition of the main loops will definitely cause an issue in the kind of identifiable nature of each one of those main loops. So something to consider there, but yeah, the energy works and kind of the overall feel works for the aesthetic of the game. Nice. All right. One more here. So, of course, the main thing is the intros and the endings being the same length as the main loops. So we'll see how those work out. Let's do 3 main loops. So, I think the instrumentation is a little sparse. I like how hard the bass and the kick drum hits. There really is no bass line. It's all focused off the kick drum. The problem is it's mostly drums and one other synth. So this is drums and pad, this is drums and lead synth, and this is drums and a piano that really doesn't fit in the kind of phrasing at the end here. It almost sounds like the ending of a composition. So it needs more instrumentation. You need drums, bass, harmony. Well, you got the drums, bass, even a bass line. Even though the kick drum is very strong, should have a bass line that carries the music along with the chord progression. And the strong changes in the instrumentation makes kind of the same thing as previously, where makes it really identifiable as to which cue you're in. So it'd be interesting to use the piano all the way through, use this lead synth all the way through, and this pad, just so that you kind of stack out and use all of the instrumentation. Alright, so are these intros? Are these the same? What? They sound very similar to the main loops. And this is the drum. Alright, so the endings and intros are not going to work in their current form. After seeing all the intros and endings from our previous submissions, you see how the intros need to build up and the endings need to resolve down. These just feel like kind of more bare bones versions of the main loops. So work on the intros and endings to kind of tie a bit more into the main loops. Alright, so those are the submissions that we have. Good things to check out overall, and I hope this encourages more folks to submit for Angry Bots. Again, we have a new composition coming up for week 2, which requires a new style of music and a new approach overall to the composition. This is the first round of the composition for 2D Platformer. You do have the opportunity to revise your music all the way through the entire month. Next week, in week 3, we will start putting your music and sound effects into the game. And you might even, if there are really obvious changes to get started on and things that you want to get to start on, then you can do that, but you might wait until you put everything into the game, because often that can reveal more changes that need to happen. So if there's certain things that are like, well, you might want to check this out and see how it works in the game, then you have the opportunity of putting your music and sound effects in the game and changing it all the way until the very end of the month. So, and we'll explain how all that works when we start working in Wise. So this is the first pass. You can and certainly should take all of the suggestions into consideration and create an updated version for your final version of the game. So please let me know if you have any questions. Now that I think everybody successfully got things completed for week 1, as we move into our new game in week 2. Please reach out if you have any questions or concerns. We'll meet again on Wednesday. If you want to take a listen to anything or play anything back in the class, we can definitely do that. So I'm going to turn it over to the archive now. Thank you very much, and I will see you again on Wednesday. All right, let's go ahead and discuss the new assignments for week 2. So we have a new project. We have a new game. We have a new soundtrack. A new style of game requires a new approach to the music. And so our game this week is called Angry Bots, and it is a demo that is provided by Unity Games. Again, this game is built in the Unity game engine. Next week, in week 3, we'll start talking more about the technology, and we'll discuss game engines and audio middleware and some of the software and tools that are kind of running all of this stuff in the background. And like I've said before, saying like game engine is like saying DAW, kind of, sort of, not really, but sort of. Basically, in the same way that a DAW is the tool that you use to make music, a game engine is the tool that a game developer uses to make a game. And just in the same way that there's Logic and Pro Tools, and they give away free projects and like, here's some recorded music for you to check out and test out how our software works. They do the same thing with games. They can provide versions of the games that people can tear apart, and we can get in there with our music and sound effects. So our new game for this week is a different style of game, different approach to gameplay overall. In Angry Bots here, you are this mercenary infiltrating a robot factory. The robots are none too happy that you're there, and they are bent on your destruction, so they will come after you. And your job is to kind of go further and further into the game world. This is a much more complete game. There is more stuff going on. Let's see here. Where am I? More stuff going on than 2D platformer, or more like there's like a beginning, a middle, and an end. Where 2D platformer, the score would just go up and up and up. This one, there is like an ending to it. You can actually beat the level. It's not a full game. It's just like one level of what would be a much larger game. But it takes about 5 or 10 minutes to complete the first time. And this one is kind of a much more futuristic, techie designed world. Lots of kind of sci-fi influences, robots and explosions and lasers and rocket launchers and sliding doors and technology and all sorts of interesting things for music and sound design. It's not probably an all ages, family friendly kind of game. Much more kind of dark and intense. And our main focus with the music is the idea of ambient and action, switching back and forth between lower intensity ambient music and higher intensity action music. And when I talk about ambient music, I don't really mean the style or genre of ambient music. Not like Brian Eno,
Music for Airports, kind of just a slow drone that never changes, never does anything. Ambient just means less than action. Sometimes it's known as battle and exploration. But this is the idea of there's a period of time in the game where you're just kind of wandering around the level trying to figure out what's going on. And lots of games do this, where there's a period of time where you're exploring, and then all of a sudden an enemy jumps out, and there's battle music. And the battle ensues for a particular period of time, and then you either win or lose the battle, and you move forward from that. So same sort of thing here. We have to, if you did nothing else in the game, if you just sat there in a corner and hid forever, you would hear this ambient piece of music. Ambient doesn't mean just a drone, just kind of slow and boring. It can have energy to it. It can have good instrument layers to it. It can have drums and bass and harmony, maybe even melody, but probably we'll leave that up for other pieces of music. But it can have structure to it, it can have development, and it really shouldn't just be one slow drone that doesn't do anything and just sits there. There would be an ambient piece of music until a battle happens. And when one of the battle happens, one of these robots comes out to attack. And you'll notice that the battles are pretty short, right? So this guy wakes up, he comes to attack, you only hit him a couple of times, and he explodes. This guy comes to attack, and I kind of toy around with him a little bit, run away, let him chase you. And eventually, you'll either destroy the bad guy or the robot, or they will destroy you. And whenever these battles happen, the action music comes in. And then when the battle is over, the action music will leave and return back to just the ambient music. The ambient layer or the ambient cue will always be there, will always be playing. And when you fight one of these robots, then the corresponding piece of action music will come in. There are 3 different types of robots, and each one of them has a different action cue or action theme that's attached to it. And whenever you battle that particular robot, you will hear its action theme. And then when you defeat that robot, that theme will eventually go away. It'll fade out. So you have an ambient cue, and then you have 3 action cues that represent each of the different robots. They can play at the same time and will play at the same time. So you will, no matter wherever you are in the game, you will always be hearing the ambient cue. Then one of these battles starts and the corresponding action cue comes in. So we have to understand, how do we add or subtract this action music whenever we want. That's one of the main challenges here. We have to be able to get into a higher intensity action piece of music and then return back to the ambient piece of music as seamlessly and invisibly as possible. So, how does the game know when a battle is happening? And the answer to that is it uses health points. It uses, you have health points, and the characters have health points. You might not notice, but this yellow bar on his back is actually a game meter or a health meter. And it tells you how long it takes. A lot to destroy you in the game, because it's mostly just to test out and have fun with it. And defeating one of these robots doesn't really take all that much time. So we'll have to discuss how we get back and forth between this lower intensity ambient music and higher intensity action music. Let me explain each one of the robots. The first one here is called the buzzer bot. This is the kind of flies around, is sort of annoying. It zaps you with these little lightning bolts. These guys are called the spider bots. They're basically bombs on legs. They come after you, and if they get close enough, you'll either destroy them, or if they get close enough, they'll self-destruct. They really don't do much except for chase you around and become annoying. These are the most frequent kind of robots on the map. There's another one over here. And let's go inside here. So, and then here is the third robot. This guy's called the Mech Bot. It's this big RoboCop-looking robot coming down the way here. These I would kind of consider like a mini boss. They're kind of harder to destroy. You have to unload into them to eventually defeat them. And then there's just the same robots across the rest of the map. The good thing with the music and sound is we really only have to focus. I mean, you really are you see everything in the beginning of the level, and all of your music and sound effects will be populated through the rest of the game. So let's go ahead and bring up some of the other material. Let's see. Here's the PDF that you get. Hello? Is that not working? Shrink down. There you go. Okay. So here's the PDF you get. It discusses all sorts of different aspects of the composition of the project. You have action and ambient cues. Why do I keep turning away? There we go. You have action and ambient cues and a discussion of each one of those. How to play Angry Bots, hopefully, should be relatively straightforward, not too difficult to control. You can use the arrow keys to go up, down, left, and right. You can use the mouse to look around and then left click or just click on your trackpad to fire. There's a couple of listening tracks as reference. Different classic games in the style of this kind of sci-fi action game. Musical style. Here we're really looking and focusing on intensity. We want to make sure that whenever those robots come after you, that it's really powerful and strong and intense. You need to feel like the danger of these robots coming to attack. Nothing too chill, nothing too laid back. Sometimes I hear some music and it's like, hey, robots aren't so bad. Let's go ahead and have a cup of coffee or something like that. And they're like, yeah, sure, that's no problem. Which is not what you want. You want intense and strong and loud, and robots are chasing you around with lasers and missile launchers and all sorts of crazy sci-fi sort of stuff. So you want to match that aesthetic. The other side of that is another thing that I get that is better, but it doesn't work too well, is like Robot Dance Party, where everything is like super hypey dance and not that dark or intense. It's like party time, and that doesn't necessarily work either. So intense and strong instrumentation. I have suggested instrumentation, synths and pads and driving bass lines, gated effects, sweeping filters, bouncing delays, fast percussion, heavy distorted guitars, big fast drums, large brass and strings, cymbal swells and impacts, anything that portrays strength and intensity. Then there's descriptions of each one of the cues, which is basically what I'm discussing now, and how they'll play back. What I really want to get to is the asset list down here. There's screenshots and descriptions of each one of the robots and how they should sound, and just a general overview. Then the asset list. There's a total of 7 files that you will create for this. I mentioned 4 of them so far: the ambient cue, buzzer action, spider action, and mech action. They're each going to be 1 to 2 minutes long, and they will loop 16-bit 44:1 stereo. So don't think about this as 4 individual 2-minute long compositions. Think about it as one composition that can be broken down into 4 parts or 4 stems. So each one of these layers is going to contain unique instrumentation. You shouldn't repeat any instruments between the different cues, so that when you hear those particular groupings of instruments or that thematic line or melody or instrument, whatever it is, you can recognize whatever robot's coming after you. You almost train the player with the music so that they can hear what's coming up next. So let me explain how these 4 files work, and then I'll get into these short stingers here. So when the game starts, if nothing else is going on, you are always hearing the ambient cue. Through the entire game, that 2-minute long ambient cue will be looping around and around. The ambient cue should be subtle. It shouldn't be too much in your face. It can still have a bit of rhythm to it. It doesn't need to have strong percussion, but it can maybe have some hi-hats or a arpeggiated bass line or some sort of gated effect that will foreshadow the rhythm that's coming. And you should you want to lay down the foundation of the progression. This is going to map out how things are going to play back in the how all the layers are going to play back together. All right, so we hear the ambient from the beginning of the game. As soon as you've been attacked, you either shoot the robot or the robot shoots you, then the action music will come in. The action music will come in immediately. It will start playing from wherever it is in the loop, and you will hear action music. This point, you need the strong percussion. You probably need a couple of layers of percussion, bass line, harmony, and probably a thematic. I don't necessarily want to say instrument like a melody, but thematic. Thematic line or thematic instruments or something that tells you what robot is coming after you so that you can give that sort of information and help the player. All right, so first guy, the battle starts, and as soon as he's destroyed, the battle ends. The music's going to start fading out at that point. Then these guys jump awake, the spider music will start, and as soon as they're destroyed, it'll stop playing and it'll fade out over time. So let's go ahead and load up some examples here. Talk my way through a couple of examples of what this might sound like. There we go. All right, so as stated before, you are going to have 4 2-minute, somewhere between 1 to 2 minute long cues or layers, or even maybe think of them as stems that can play back together and play at the same time. The biggest challenge here is going to be dissonance and clashing notes. You want to make sure that there's a lot of similarities between these cues. They need to all start at the same time. They need to end at the same time. They need to be in the same key, in the same tempo and same time signature, and they need to all loop together. They need to follow a common chord progression. Because even if they're in the same key, if they're all headed to different chords at the same time, it's going to probably not work so well. So you need to, with all of the things that are the same, key, tempo, time signature, looping, starting, stopping, the things that are going to be unique are your choice of instrumentation. Each cue should have unique instrumentation that's only found in that cue. You really shouldn't repeat any instrument lines. You shouldn't copy anything because when the game puts it all back together, it's going to double things up. Like if you have the same drum pattern in multiple cues, when you play them all together, then that drum pattern is 4 times as loud as everything else. So make sure that you have unique instrumentation and then a unique composition. Each cue should have certainly a strong rhythm. That's going to be the most of the action part. And then a thematic melodic line or thematic instrument or thematic phrase or something like that that helps identify whatever robot it is. Probably a baseline to help, although you don't need necessarily a bass in all four of them. A chord progression, but you don't also need to put all of the voicing of every single chord in each one of the cues, right? So you write your chord progression, you're going to have 3 or 4 voices per chord. Well, all 4 of these don't need to have all 4 voices every single time. Maybe one of them is just the root, follows the foundation. Another one, you've got the 3rd and the 5th. Maybe another one, you get the 1st and the 5th, if you've got 7ths in there. And you can start, if you write out the chord progression first, you have a basic common structure or skeleton to work from. So let's go ahead and check this out. Just get started here. Let's play. Start with the ambient cue. All right, I am going to I'm going to play the part of the game, just mixing these up and down. And the whole reason this thing is going to work in the game is because when the game starts, all 4 of these pieces of music are going to start, and they're going to play together. They're going to reach the end and all loop together, so they're going to constantly be in sync. The only thing is, the player's only going to hear this first one at the beginning. The 3 others are going to be silent. Then the buzzer comes in. So let's do this. Game starts. Game starts, and you hear just the ambient cue. And then once you get attacked here, that's the buzzer bot, and so the buzzer music will immediately come in. And you're going to hear that buzzer music as long as the battle's going on. And then once you defeat that robot, it's going to start fading out. And the game is going to do this a whole lot better than I can and control it in the DAW. But it's going to fade that out. And whenever that robot attacks, that music comes in. So this is the buzzer by itself. So we've added the low strong strings. You got some big timpani hits in there, big low bass drums, and there's these little white noise sweeps somewhere, I think, in here. There you go. So it adds a little bit of layers. So this ambient cue is mainly made up of, has a hi-hat pattern in it, but mostly is a chord progression. This is outlining the chord progression. No, it's a couple of notes that are just kind of presenting the foundation of that chord progression. Here in the chat, it says, so that means we're making tracks separate, so that means the music can't clash. Yeah, you are probably best to think about it as one whole composition. So what I end up doing in my composition session is I'll set up a region just like this, like a particular length that depends on your tempo of your music, and you'll count out how many bars will fit, how many bars you want to use that will fit with between 1 to 2 minutes, and then just start adding instruments. I would often start out with a basic just piano. Just start writing your chord progression, even though it's going to end up probably very synthetic and very electronic and all that sort of stuff. Start out with a piano or a basic keyboard patch. Write out your chord progression, maybe write a few melodies that could work with it, figure out what instruments you're going to use, and then just keep stacking them on top of each other so that it becomes one cohesive composition. But eventually they're going to be bounced out separate from each other so that the game can use them individually as it needs to. All right, so that is the buzzer. And once that buzzer is defeated, it eventually fades away, back to the ambient. And then you go after the next one. So this spider pops up. When that spider pops up, the music is going to immediately add in the spider cue. It sounds like this. Hi-hat, bass line, a little melodic line that we'll hear is actually a double of the mech cue. Here it is with the ambient. And then this guy's destroyed. This guy chases around a little bit. When that guy's gone, the music will fade out. Until you get after this guy. And this guy is the mech bot. And he comes and he attacks, and it sounds like this. So with that one, you've got strong brass and strings. You basically have the high strings to match the low strings from the buzzer cue. You've got a strong lead melody. This one, where's it coming? Right about here. And you also have the ability to have 2 or even all 3 robots on the screen at the same time. So we could bring in the buzzer cue. Bring in the spider cue. And all 4 of these cues should be able to play together. No clashing notes, no clashing rhythms. Again, think about it as one cohesive composition that with multiple layers that can play at the same time. There are 3 other files that are listed in the asset list. The music buzzer stinger, the spider stinger, and the mech stinger. And those are there to help the transitions from the ambient into the action. The action cues are going to hit quickly, and you do not know where they're going to be in the music. So to help this transition, we add in stingers. And stingers are going to play when the action cue is introduced. So let me give you an example here. I'm going to divide this up like how it will sound in the game. Just kind of set this up so everything is set up correctly. Something like that, something like this. And then we'll put fades. So we got a fade out there, and fade out there, and fade out there. All right, so when the buzzer action comes in, when it comes in here, You'll notice that the buzzer, it'll come in probably in the middle of some phrase somewhere, doesn't have a strong impact, just kind of jumps up. So, oh, I was actually at the end of a sweep there. That's actually kind of luckier than it typically is. Turn off my fade there. Thank you. Let's play that again. So it just comes in there. And so to hide that sudden transition, we can throw stingers in here. And the game's going to do this all for you. A stinger should hit have a strong impact at the front and fade out to silence very quickly. It's meant to distract and create a little bit of interest at that whatever the random point that's going to transition. Provides a little bit of consistency, even though it is kind of just going to be a random point. If you're familiar with electronic music and like drops and impacts and things like that, that is commonly what a stinger could be. Stingers are typically have a strong impact, maybe some low end, maybe it could be a drop. And then there's another layer or two on top of what I call like some modulation or some filtering or a pitch drop or a filter sweep or a synth arpeggiator or something like that. These are all kind of strong impacts. They should not be tonal. They should not be rhythmic, because since you don't know where they're going to be played, it might clash. So strong hit, lots of reverb, tails out to silence. There's another one. And like I said, they are there to cause a bit of distraction as you're going from one piece of music to the next. So here's what it might sound like when played against the action cues. And again, the game does all of this for you. You just have to create the material. So it should provide a hit, and then the one should fade out, and the other piece of music will already be there. Here's another one. And here's a third one. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of where to start with the composition. I'm going to play one more here. Let's get rid of that, and this, and this. All right, here's another ambient cue. So this would be a good example. This would be a good example to say that the ambient cue doesn't need to be boring. It doesn't need to not move or do any or have any changes to it. Here you can hear the outline of the chord progression. You hear a arpeggiated phrase. You hear some percussion, but it's not like a kick, snare, hi-hat pattern. It is sporadic and meant to provide emphasis. Here is the buzzer cue. Here it is by itself. So it follows along. It's got a little melodic line to it. it's got drums. That's probably the most important thing to add for the action cue. Here's a spider. This one's mostly drum kit. Mostly drum kit, got a lot of crash cymbal in there. And here's the mech. Mech sounds cool. It almost sounds like an alarm going off. You definitely have to watch out when all four of these are playing to make sure it doesn't completely overload the master. But a common progression, a common pace, a common rhythm to it that allows each one of these layers to be added and subtracted at any point. Then the game, whenever a new idea comes into play, it can just fade in the corresponding piece of music as necessary. So hopefully that helps in describing how the composition is going to be set up. I do want to show off a couple of things with the sound effects for the sound design this week. Please let me know if you have any questions as we go along, or if you're just watching the archive, then you can send me a message if you need any sort of clarification. So that's the compositional side of things. You also have the sound design, creating sound effects for Angry Bots, 22 sound effects. Again, this is, like I said before, because it's a little futuristic and robots and weapons and things like that, explosions, there's a lot of fun opportunity for sound design. So let me just load up the sound effects. And I would suggest that you do something similar to last time, where you would load the original sound effects into Logic and use them as reference. So let's see, I'll close down this session. Don't save. Get a brand new session here. Now, when you go download this assignment, you are going to get a folder that looks like this. It's called Angry Bots Original Sound Effects. And it's gonna, you unzip it and it's gonna have two folders. One is called To Replace and the other one is called To Use. There's a total of 60 some odd sound effects in the game, and I don't require you to do all of them. You can use some of the original ones to supplement them. So the one that's called To Replace, these contain the 22 sound effects from the original, these do contain the original sound effects, but these are the ones that you will have to do for the assignment. And the reason is these are the more interesting sound designy kind of sounds, if that really makes any sense. They are the more obvious weapons and robot kind of sound effects. The ones to use, these are some ambiances and interior shots. Then there's like bullet impacts and ricochets, and then there's also footsteps. So you're probably not going to win any awards off of your footstep design. You're not going to get hired off of your ricochet. Well, who knows? Maybe you would. But more likely, this is a focus on the music and the and more important sound effects. So something to consider, but we definitely are going to do and replace the to replace. I include the other ones there because you can and are encouraged to do all of it, so that whenever you show this off, you can say, I did everything in this game. Otherwise, some of the original sound effects will be there still. But let's just use the to replace folder. I'm going to take all of these sound effects and I'm going to drag them onto a track here in Logic. Open, place all the files on one track, yes. It always comes up with, oh, actually this one doesn't. If it comes up and asks you if you need to change your sample rate, just change the sample rates of the files, that's fine. You're going to bounce them out anyway. All right, then once you have the original sound effects on here, you would probably spend some time, you'd probably clean this up a little bit. They don't need to be right on top of each other. So take these and separate them out a bit. Oh, that didn't work. Well, Logic, come on. You can cooperate with me. There we go. Do that. Do that. And you don't need to watch me do all of these. But just trust me, separate them out a little bit so that there's a little gap in there. So when you bounce everything, you have a little room. Then you would create a couple of blank tracks down below. And build all of your sound design directly below the original sounds. But listen to the sounds as reference for what they should sound like, how loud they should be, what's the shape or like the waveform look like, how loud is it, how long is it, yeah, just the basic properties of that file. And then you would build your own sound effects down below. I'm going to cheat here and just drag these down. You would not do this. Don't do this. This is a bad idea. But basically, if I were to fake it, these would be all of my effects. And you definitely mute out the originals when you bounce. You don't want the original files in there. They're really obvious to hear. And you have, then you'd bounce these out and you'd have your sound effect. And you'd go through and design all of these. Let me actually play these. I think this is going to work. Let's see if these broadcast. Airlock door close. That did not work. Hold on. How about this? Let's try that again. There it goes. Okay, this is airlock door close. There are a lot of doors in the game, and there are all the Star Trek kind of doors that open and slide open and close and do all that stuff. So there's a door open. There's a door close, and the assignment has pictures of everything, so you can play through the game. You can see what's what. A lot of times you can get away with the close just being the reverse of the open. Maybe there's a little like chunk, like ka-chunk at the end as it locks closed. But with these, you can use with hydraulics, pneumatics, servos, motors, those kind of things give you those kind of great mechanical sounds. Ambience, exterior rain. It's a rain loop. 30 seconds. Yours doesn't have to be that long, but just a consistent rain clip that you'll hear when you're outside of the robot factory. Interior hum. This is when you go in. This is like room tone. I always think that sounds like the inside of a spaceship or something. Like, as if I knew what the inside of a spaceship sounded like, but I'm sure. Something like that. Flying buzzer destroyed. There's a lot of sound effect. There's a lot of explosions. So the two main things in the game are, not main things, but things that have a lot of sounds are doors opening and closing, and explosions. So what I would suggest that you do when you go do the sound design is you should be familiar with like the Westar Music Library to get access to sound effects there. There's another resource called freesound.org, which is a website. It's kind of a community-driven website. And free Westar is great because it has a whole bunch. It has the sound ideas library, which is a great, like, very high quality sound effects library. Freesound.org is community driven. There are lots and lots of sound effects on there. There's also lots and lots of very bad sound effects that are not worth anything. But there's also some very good stuff in there. And for the types of things you're trying to do, a lot of that stuff can be covered there also. So what I would do is say, okay, I need explosions. So go off and search for a whole bunch of explosions, bring them back in, and then combine them all together to make the sounds that you need. Don't work on one sound at a time. Don't say, I need a flying buzzer explosion. Go find an explosion, bring it back, edit it, name it, bounce it. Then go, oh, I need a mech explosion. Then go back out, get another file, bring it back in, edit, name it, format. Like, that takes too long to go back around and around and around like that. Do it in chunks. A lot of times when I do sound design, I'll spend one day just looking through sounds. Like, just go find my library of whatever it is. And I'll just go, here's 25 sounds that I'll eventually put all together. Then maybe the same day or maybe the next day, I'll go back and I'll just edit everything. Put them all together, layer them up, see what works. Then often, if there's time, I might have another day that's just like mixing and bouncing and formatting and delivery, like finalizing everything. So if you work in big chunks like that, it often makes the process a bit easier. This is Zap Electric. This is when the lightning bolt kind of shoots out and zaps you. Mech Alert. All of the robots have an alert sound when they recognize that you're there. They kind of wake up and attack. So there's kind of an alarm sound there. Mech Destroyed Explosion. It's an absolutely huge sounding explosion, which is good for that very large mech robot. These are patrol mech footsteps. As that thing is walking down the hallway, you will hear these footsteps for footstep 1, footstep 2. I think they completely cheated and used the same sounds. You could probably make it a little bit more interesting than that. Missile explosion. So this is when it fires at you. So it shoots its missiles at you, which is this shoot missile sound. So it fires them, and then it either hits you or hits a wall or something like that and explodes. The spider alert. Right? So a little couple of beeps as it wakes up. You don't have to do exactly the same thing. Just kind of do some other stuff. I've heard very cool things where people have done like vocoded robot voices when these things like wake up and it goes attack or something like that. Spider destroyed explosion. These are the bombs on the... That's when you destroy it. This is when it self-destructs. I think that is a horrible explosion sound. It's a real big letdown compared to the other explosions. Proximity. This is when the spider bots are coming after you. They beep. And it's very important. Just make that one little beep. And you don't want it to be very long because what happens is as it gets closer to you, the beep gets faster and faster. It goes beep, 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 beep. And so if you have like a long sound, that's just going to stack up and sound all sorts of crazy. So all you really need is one really short sample. Spider self-destruct, that's the bad explosion. Interior doors open and close. These are the Star Trek doors that slide open and closed. I always think that sounds like somebody's window being rolled up or down. Locked door opening. Once you get, you stand next to these computer terminals and you hack the computers, and it allows these locked doors to open. Player death. This is when you die. That's not true. That's a gunshot. That is the incorrect sound. Let me get that out of there. Player hit. This is when you take damage. Player shooting. This is the gunshot sound. It's pretty important with that sound. That is going to be a looping sound. And it is important that you match the timing of those shots because I think it matches the animation or the muzzle flash in the game, which is this. So this is player shooting. Oh, muted. Right, so that's just a loop going around and around. You would probably be best served 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 12 in here. Just build your shots right below that and just use the same timing so that it creates this kind of smooth loop overall. And the last one is, I think it's the last one. Yeah, terminal hacked. Right, just some sort of electronic sound as the terminal is being hacked. I've heard people like typing on their computers, or it sounds like a keyboard, or there's a voice in there that says terminal hacked. I don't know why a computer would tell you it's been hacked, but whatever. So that hopefully, again, will give you a good direction for your sound design. Always make sure that you mute out the original track. Don't include the original sound effects in there. Create 22 sound effects for Angry Bots. And I think that should be it. That's certainly quite enough for me for this afternoon. We did the peer review of the submissions, which was always great. Again, it hopefully encourages everybody to submit also for next round. And then we talked about your Angry Bots and your Angry Bots music and sound design. So if you have any questions, go ahead and post them up in the chat or send me a message. But other than that, let's go ahead and wrap it up there. And I'll see you again on Thursday. All right. Thank you very much.